G'day mates. Today we're on the hunt, but I do want to be quiet because there's lots of spitting cabras out here. Spitting llamas too. Crikey mates, there it is! The perfect spot for my new concrete slab. Today guys, I'm going to show you how easy it is to pour your own concrete slab or foundation. This foundation is actually going to be pretty interesting because it's going to be circular and it's going to go right where this flower pot is. God. I'm gonna go about this a little bit different than normal for a small slab because generally what you would use is a 2x4. That's probably what you've seen done before. But for me, I'm gonna be using OSB because the slab I'm gonna be pouring is round and I need flexibility. I also need some sunglasses. You don't have to do this next part, but I wanna make sure that this circle is as perfect as can be. So what I've done is just put a screw into an old scrap piece of 2x4 and I'm gonna set that on the ground. Swing it around right to there, okay. So now I'm just gonna take my tape measure and 55 inches is the diameter of the circle, so 27.5. I'm gonna hook tape on there. I'm gonna come out to 27.5. Yep, 55 inches, just like it's supposed to be. So now the next thing is I've got to figure out what the circumference of this is. And if you remember your math correctly, the way you figure out circumference is pi times diameter. I don't. After finally figuring out how to multiply 55 inches times pi, I cut 4 pieces of OSB down to 3.5 inches tall. Now I'll use those dimensions for my circumference to cut these to length because it's going to take 2 of them to go around one time and then it's going to take 2 of them to double it around, in which case I figured out the circumference of 56 inches times pi. But guess what? This OSB, even though it's more flexible than a 2x4, yeah, still not very bendy. So what I'm gonna have to do is cut slots in this and put kerf reliefs using my chop saw. Much more bendy now. Of course, actually, is that a bend? Does that count as a bend? I don't know. Is that a bend? I cut a little too far on that cut right there, a little too deep. Oh well, we'll make it work. Now you can see why I drew this circle out to begin with, because we're gonna take the pieces of OSB and this will help us make sure that we stay in a perfect circle as we go around our outline. Okay, you ready, beautiful? Put it right in the thick part there. See how there's a thicker part? Right there. Yep. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, now do this one. There you go. Okay. Ow!
Oh, sorry.
Don't put your finger on the other side of the screw. Funny thing is that that's the only time, I think pretty much every other screw I made sure that my finger was not behind it in case that happened. And that's the only one I did that on. And that's the only screw that went through. Magic. Now I can carry this whole thing around to the front yard. Whoa, it is hot out today. But before I can lay this down and clear out for it, we do have one issue. Yep, that pot right there is exactly where this has to go. So Madison, if you want to slide that pot out of the way. Toes. They've got the mulch kind of moved out of the way, and I'm just going to get some of this dirt out of here too. This will just kind of, okay. Come over here a little bit more, come over here. Now you can either make your own stakes, which I could have done because I've got plenty of wood. But while I was at the hardware store, they had these steaks. These are just some delicious steaks too. I might throw some of these on the Barbie later. Anyway, these are super cheap, so I just went ahead and bought some. I need my level. You want to grab my level, Riley? It's the long yellow thing. So what I'm going to do is work off of the high side just to make it easier. This will be my starting point for everything else. And right here is where like I got a split. You can see there where there's a seam right there. So I'm just gonna put a stake on each side of that. Level that. I only have a 4-foot level, so that won't reach all the way across here. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of leveling it as I go along, and that'll work the same. I could take a straight edge if I wanted, but this will work fine. But you can see here, by going across here like this, how I'm level here. Now I'm just gonna trim these stakes off so that they're not sticking up here. That'll make it easier for me to screed once I get the concrete in here. Now, if you're wondering why I'm putting a concrete slab out here in the front yard, it's because this slab is actually going to be where Kim's water fountain sits that she got for her birthday. And because it's a water fountain, I need to be able to run a plug right down the middle of this, a cord I should say, that will run over to an electrical box that I'm gonna install over here later. In order to do that, I've got to bury this 3-inch pipe. And of course I could have went with a smaller pipe, but I went with the 3-inch because that way I know when it makes that bend in the corner right there, there'll be 0 issues. So I've just got to dig out for this now. I'm just gonna kind of level the dirt out inside the form. And this doesn't have to be exact. This doesn't have to be perfectly level by any means. I'm gonna put some gravel in the bottom of this. Now I've seen people pour pads using gravel. And I've seen people pour pads without gravel. It's supposed to help with the drainage. I don't know really what it's gonna do, but I'm gonna put it in there just to be on the safe side. Do be careful when removing your gravel from the bed of your truck. Just like with the dirt, whenever I spread it out, I'm not worried about this being especially level. I just want to have about 1 inch of base down. Next up is reinforcement, and you could use some small rebar, but I'm actually going to use this rebar panel, or remesh as it's called. All right, who's ready to pour some concrete? I pondered using my little concrete mixer, a little electric mixer, versus just using a bucket. And then I came to the decision that it's kind of a hassle cleaning that thing out. And this is kind of small, so we'll see whether or not I regret that decision. Just to be clear, I'm using Quickcrete high-strength concrete mix, 80-pound bags. And I'm starting to question my decision to not use the electric mixer.
Madison and I continued adding cement as quickly as possible to prevent the earlier mixes from setting up. I definitely wouldn't recommend pouring a bigger pad than this without either having a mixer or having more help available. As we added cement, I pulled the remesh up to make sure it was in the middle of the pad. I also made sure to push the cement into the edges using my fingers.
What I'm doing now is screeding the top of it, and I saved back some concrete, some cement mix, I should say, to fill any low spots.
After screeding the cement, I smoothed it with a finishing trowel, and I didn't worry too much about getting it perfect at this point.
And freeze. Guys, let me break in here real quick. At this point, I had to come inside and take a cold shower because I'm pretty sure that I was having like really bad heat exhaustion. I had a throbbing headache. My body just wasn't like functioning right. I just like felt confused, and I looked like I had just jumped in a pool. I was soaking wet. So I had to come inside and cool off. Let this be your warning, you know, when you're doing these projects outside, don't overdo it in the crazy heat.
After cooling down for about 45 minutes, I went back out and using an edging trowel, I rounded over the top of the concrete pad. This was a little difficult with the round form, and to be honest, I'm not even sure how necessary it was for my application. I then smoothed the cement with my finishing trowel, and after another 45 minutes of letting it set, I went over the whole cement pad with a concrete broom to give it a slip-resistant texture. I let everything set for 2 days, and then I removed the form, making a cut with the oscillating saw, and then just pulling the rest of the form up using my hammer. For the next week, I made sure the concrete pad stayed wet to help it cure stronger, and the constant rain helped out with this.
And that brings us to today. Well, actually tomorrow, because that's when Kim's fountain is scheduled to be delivered for like the 4th time. We kept having to reschedule because it's basically been monsoon season. It's been over 2 weeks since we first poured the pad, and it's definitely strong enough now to hold the fountain.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.